Hi friends, I'm Red Stegall. I'm a Texas entertainer and rancher, and I'm inviting you to join us for Saddle Up, an evening at the Alamo on Saturday, March 29th. It's a night of Texas-sized fun to benefit the Alamo Statewide Stampede, a way for Texas ranchers to help preserve the Alamo and its rich history. Don't own livestock? No problem. Just dust off your boots and join us at the Alamo for a night of live music, top-notch entertainment, and authentic Texas cuisine catered by the legendary Perini Ranch Steakhouse. Get your tickets at thealamo.org.
Stories bigger than Texas, the Alamo podcast. The Alamo has roughly 4,500 artifacts in its collection, including hundreds of rarely seen documents that are a treasure trove of rich historical detail. Today, we reveal the Alamo's groundbreaking efforts to digitize this history, the technology that will make it possible for Alamo enthusiasts from around the world to view it, and how you can be among the first to unlock these secrets from the past. I'm your host, Emily Balcom. We're joined by Dr. Tyler Taylor, the Alamo's Vice President of Collections, Curation, Conservation, and Archaeology; Viviana Guajardo, the Alamo's Digitization Project Archivist; and Misty Lanham, the Alamo's Collections Manager. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
It's always nice to start with defining key words. So Viviana, let's start with, what is digitizing and why are museums investing in it?
I love that question because really in the last 5 years, we've really seen a lot of cultural heritage institutions, museums really delve into the world of digitization. And we can define digitization as the practice of creating high-resolution scans from paper-based materials, photographic materials, and film-based materials. So this could be, old Kodak carousels. It could be old forms of photographs. It can be documents, really everything in between, including maps, which is one of my personal favorite form of scanning in paper-based materials. Digitization is also capturing 3D objects, so things that couldn't go on a scanner, such as a statue or perhaps a doll. So we would go in and photograph those items. So the whole practice of digitization allows us to share what's in our collection in a way that is accessible to many. And this practice really developed, and I think it really gained momentum, I would say, during the pandemic and post-pandemic, just because there was a shift in the way that individuals were interacting with museums and exhibits. So it wasn't so much about, walking into the physical space anymore. It was about reimagining, how can an educator gain access to a museum exhibit? How can a historian in Japan be able to view what we have here at a cultural heritage institution? So digitization is this wonderful practice that allows cultural heritage institutions such as ours to share what is really behind the exhibits, things we have in the back of house, so to speak. And I'm just so excited to be able to partake in the world of digitization.
Tyler, why is it so important at this moment in time to start creating a digital record of the Alamo's archives?
Well, right now we're really fortunate to have donors who want to support digitization and really want to bring the Alamo collection to life. I really love talking about activating the collection. So it's not just sitting there waiting to be viewed. It's something that people can interact with and develop a relationship with and learn from. So right now we're fortunate to have the ability to bring in the professionals that we need, the experts that we need, the tools and equipment that we need to bring the Alamo collection to life and bring it to the public in a way that isn't always possible in a formalized museum setting. You can't always have everything on display all the time, but we really are pushing really hard to get to a goal to make our collections, which belong to the people of Texas, accessible to the people of Texas.
Because I have had people ask me, what about this object that I saw a year ago? Why isn't it on display anymore? because it does go back in the vault to rest for a little bit, but this will bring it out of the vault to people.
Our number one priority is to preserve all of our objects in perpetuity. So not just today's Texans, but tomorrow's Texans and generations from now are able to enjoy it as well. And so that means that especially for more fragile and vulnerable objects like paper products, they need some time, like you said, to rest from light.
And Viviana's position and her work, they're grant funded. Tell me about that grant.
Like I said, we were really fortunate to have some anonymous donors who are really interested in preserving the primary source documents that tell the Alamo story. And we have several large collections that are primarily document-based. And so that's been our number one priority, is to get digital files of those documents so that people can really look at them in detail, because there's so much to learn, not just from the transcription or the text or what a document says, but looking at the actual object, seeing the texture, the ink, how the person wrote. Were they writing quickly? Was this a hurried thing? Or was this something they took a lot of care in? There's a lot that you can learn from. And also it's just, it brings the story to life. It puts that humanity behind the history. And so our donors were really drawn to the documents in our collection and the idea that making these digital would make them more accessible, particularly for educators and students, so that you don't have to bring your whole class on a field trip to the Alamo to get the whole story. If we can make them easily accessible online, then they can be tools that can be used not just in Texas, but throughout the country.
Viviana, how did you get into this field and what excites you about it? Because I do hear in your voice the excitement you have about your work.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate what Tyler says. I think the key word there is activating the collection. And part of the work that we do as museum professionals is collection stewardship. And I think the work that we are all doing, we are all experiencing, and in this particular example about digitization, really embodies being stewards of the collection and creating pathways of accessibility. And oddly enough, positions like these in the museum world, oftentimes you find people with a variety of backgrounds. And in terms of how they get into this particular line of work, my background is in anthropology, but I also have a minor in studio art, which is where I picked up more of the photographic principles that are needed for any form of digital imaging. I would say the role of digital imaging, digitization in a museum setting is almost this trio of skill sets of a little bit archival, photographic, studio knowledge, and also understanding collections care. And I think it's such a beautiful thing that we have museum professionals coming from different backgrounds and different specialties and kind of being able to synergize our skills for the good of the collection and really embodying that idea of activation and collection stewardship.
You mentioned a really key word there, access. And access can mean breaking through a lot of things, from geographic barriers to financial barriers.
Mm-hmm. Digital accessibility is what, I always say, like bringing the collection to the kitchen table. So when we really imagine making collection accessible, we think of educators in Maine wanting to discuss the Alamo and use resources through kind of these official channels as Tyler depicted. I think of global enthusiasts, the coin collector in India, all these wonderful interests that we have, that people have vocalized, that we do have in our collection. School, when I think of school field trips, maybe there is a school that does not have the ability to come in person, but we can provide education materials for youth, for emerging minds to be able to understand Texas revolutionary history, what we do here, and what it means.
Misty, I imagine it's really easy to say, we're going to digitize everything, but there are so many details that go into this. What's the process?
You are so right. So in this process, we had to do a little work before the work started. And so in doing that, what we did was we gained a scope of the collection. We shared that with the foundation that wanted to donate these funds. We created proposals for what we thought we would need to do in that process, what we could create with those items, and then the opportunities that could come about from that. And then once we had approval, we needed to hire our digital archivist. So the wonderful Viviana came on. What was really great about Viviana is that she has worked in a variety of environments. And so she was able to come in and help us build this program from the ground up. And then from that, we have done all sorts of research. And one of the things I think that is probably not thought of very often, but we've thought about a whole lot, is where do you store these digital assets once they are created? And we need to make sure that they are in a safe place and that they are in file formats that aren't going to degrade as the technology evolves. And if they're stored in one location, they probably need to be stored in another, because what if a hurricane hits the place where they're being stored, and all sorts of things. And so we've really been digging into that. And then, like anything new, we're so excited to see how our users take advantage of these digital assets through our website, learn from them, get feedback, and figure out how we can grow and expand and make it as usable and friendly to everyone as we can.
We want to know what works and what doesn't for the average user out there. We want that feedback.
Absolutely. And this is definitely a growing project as our collection grows, but also as we're able to go in and add more information about our artifacts. And so I do imagine in these first stages, it'll be an absolute learning experience. We'll start off, we'll share the images, we'll share information. We may learn that people want transcriptions, or maybe somebody writes in and they have a connected family story that really helps us understand the artifact. And so we're able to grow this as we go along.
Viviana, what are the first items you are digitizing and how were they chosen?
It's all about documents to start. That was such a priority, and specifically collections, complete document collections versus more of a one-off document here and there. There's something, and I know Tyler alluded to this, with the personability of documents, looking at handwriting and signatures, being able to zoom in on a signature to maybe even verify, could we compare a signature to another document, and that level of granularity of looking at really the beauty that these documents have to offer. There's something really personal about first handwritten documents. So some key collections, Phil Collins, Clara Driscoll, Gail Borden collections, and various other complete collections that, speak to topics of cattle and ranching, various aspects of indigeneity, Texas Revolutionary history. So that was such really a beautiful thing in the making, to interact with these documents and be able to create digitized scans for these complete collections that share these really important parts of our history.
And you will be able to zoom in and see each piece of handwriting, each pen smudge.
That is most certainly the goal, to be able to look at these in high resolution documents to where you could see everything down to a point or a period. And especially when looking at cursive writing, which is a very common in all these documents, being able to zoom in is incredibly important because of the nature of the writing and having that clarity. I would even say that's another form of accessibility, is that high resolution clarity for various types of handwriting in terms of late 1800s, early 1900s cursive styles.
With documents being the priority, a lot of people may be wondering, what about all the artifacts, the 3D artifacts? Will we be able to see high-res images where you can zoom in and see details like the carvings on a sword or the stitching and clothing?
That is definitely the goal. We want to get there. We're starting off with documents because that was, our number one priority, but we have a medium to long-term goal to really achieve that level of detail and make that accessible.
Misty, the interactive table on the second floor of the Alamo exhibit at the Ralston Family Collection Center is an example of some of this work already.
It is. So if you have not visited the interactive table yet, it allows you to zoom into the pictures and see the artifacts in really great detail. It has descriptions, and you can even email the artifacts to yourself or to a friend. What has been fascinating is that we are able to pull some of the information about the interactions with that. And so we have learned that one of the most popular artifacts is the sesquicentennial chess set, and it's been viewed over 20,000 times. In looking at the data, we've also been able to see that over 4,500 people have emailed artifacts to themselves. And so people really seem to be enjoying that. So the next phase will be to begin sharing, along with our documents, more of our artifacts online.
The Alamo will be releasing these digital archives in phases. How soon can people go online and start looking?
We are hoping to debut this in just a few days on February 23rd, so the first day of our commemoration of the siege and battle of the Alamo. And the first phase will be documents and some artifacts. After that, we'll just continue to add more and more images and research and transcripts and keep growing the site and sharing the Alamo's artifacts.
Will this be a free resource, free of charge?
Absolutely. This is free for anybody who wants to come and anybody who wants to ask us questions or ask more about the artifacts. We love that kind of engagement. So the more the merrier.
Love it. And we clearly anticipate a lot of interest from historical researchers. How will they need to credit the Alamo in their work?
This site will give access to all of these images, and we imagine it will be pretty similar to how professional historians or marketing people usually go about getting access and licensing images. We're trying to make it as simple as possible. So whenever you go into the artifact website, there's an area that's called Image Services, and it tells you how to select the images that you would like to use and how to submit a request. The more detail that you can add, the better on this one. And then staff will contact you to be able to process that request.
How do you all see this digital archive portal evolving over time as you add more and more to it?
There are so many possibilities and so many directions it could go. As our collection grows, we're going to have more and more opportunities to do things that are perhaps more interpretive with the website, things that read a little bit more like an online exhibit. One day you could click on a topic and say, you know what, I would like to see what the Alamo has about the Texas Revolution. And then we would have a curated list of our most popular objects. So we really want to create something that's usable for a wide range of audiences, for the casual enthusiast who just wants to come and see what's going on in our collection, look at some interesting and cool stuff, to teachers who maybe need to look like, okay, I've got this lesson plan coming up. What kind of resources can I find that fit these specific needs? All the way to the scholar and the professional historian who are coming in saying, I need to find this specific subset of documents in this specific box that would be on this shelf of this archive. You know, we really want something that fits those wide ranges of needs. Our number one priority is access and getting these things available. And that's why we decided to take this staged approach. So we're going to get things out there in the best way we can as soon as we can. And we're so excited about this opening in a couple of days. And then after that, we'll just look for feedback from all of these different users so that we can continue to grow and continue to improve and continue to cater to all of those different needs.
We've talked a lot on this podcast about preservation, particularly of the physical structures of the Alamo Church and Lawn Barrack. How does digitizing this history play a key role in preservation and really expanding the definition of preservation?
So one of the wonderful things about digitization, even when I reflect on certain types of photographic formats from the late 1800s, like tintypes, those often have a span of life, for example, 90 to 100 years. We have a variety of photographic formats in our vault, and it is a wonderful thing, but because we have high resolution capabilities with the equipment we use, we can actually, from a preservation standpoint, see how these things change over time. So by scanning them at, one point in time, and, the practice of digitization allows for information to be dates, condition reporting, all those things can happen when we look at creating a digital asset, as we say, and to be able to track something over time, specifically more vulnerable items, really speaks to preservation and being able to have that form of intellectual control over our collection and thinking about, is it time to think about conservation for this one item that might be more sensitive than the others? So in that way, digitization allows us to capture things as they are at a certain time so that we can be very proactive about how we need to store this, humidity levels, how we need to think about caring for this. So we can imagine this item existing 100 years from now, 50 years from now, and the images generated help museum professionals really gather that information to make those really informed decisions about collections care.
And I would also add to that, heaven forbid something happens to a document that we have on exhibit, or there is a vase that falls over. We have images of it, so we would be able to do a comparison, and a conservator would be able to repair that if there is damage beyond repair for some reason. There's a flood. I get knock on wood on that, but
no one likes thinking about it, but it's your job is to think about
absolutely,
this.
Especially, my heart goes out to the museums that were affected by the California wildfires. They lost their collections, but those items that were digitized are still able to live on kind of forever because they captured that. And so there is such value in taking care of the collection and digitizing these objects.
Dr. Tyler Taylor, Viviana Guajardo, and Misty Lanham, thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out the podcast notes. The digital archive is launching in just a few days on Sunday, February 23rd, and we'll be linking to it once it goes live. We are also linking to our full commemoration calendar so you can join all the events marking the siege and battle of the Alamo. Here are some standout highlights. Our opening fandango on Sunday, February 23rd. Our annual reading of the Travis Letter during Victory or Death on Monday, February 24th, which will be immediately followed by the kickoff of our Alamo statewide Stampede fundraising effort. Then on Saturday, March 1st, join us for the Immortal 32 Arrive. On Sunday, March 2nd, we'll be celebrating Texas Independence Day with a Living History event. All of this is leading up to the very powerful Dawn at the Alamo ceremony on Thursday, March 6th, marking the 189th anniversary of the Battle of the Alamo. You've been listening to Stories Bigger Than Texas, the Alamo Podcast.